John Bradshaw with us tonight. You know what? I'm very thankful that the people that Memorial Baptist Church supports through the year get to come and we get to hear their story firsthand. And not only that, to know that he's one of our own. And what a blessing that is. And we love Brother Sean. So thankful he's here. Look forward to hearing what the Lord's placed on his heart and to see what all's going on in E-Way Ministries. And if you're unfamiliar, if you haven't heard his story, I'm sure he'll explain introduce E-Way to you tonight. So let's have a word of prayer, and then Brother Sean will come and share with us. Father, it is so good to be in your house tonight. So grateful that we can come and hear about what you are doing around the world. God, sometimes we get caught up in who we are and where we're located and what's going on with us. But it's good to be reminded that you are working all around the globe. And so, Lord, I pray that our hearts be touched. Bless Brother Sean as he shares. And we thank you for what you're doing through him. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you so much. And it is a joy to be able to be here and share with each of you. It's, one of the things that I enjoy the most is sharing what God is doing and being able to share with people the joy of his work and what he's doing all around the world, specifically where I'm serving the Lord in Ukraine, and knowing this church has been a support and that there's a permanent fixture in your prayer room for Ukraine and for the work I'm doing there is an encouragement to me as I go and I serve and I take the Word of God all around. Just so that I can stay on track with the slides, I'm pulling up my own copy here so I don't get lost. But yes, I want to kind of share a little bit about E-Way. Many of you who were here maybe last year for when I shared might know some of this or might remember some of it, but it has been a year, and I understand if you might have forgotten some of the things even if you were here. But E-Way is a missions organization that's based specifically in Ukraine. It's nowhere else in the world. It's and the E for E-Way stands for two things. It stands for English, because one of the ways that we reach the people of Ukraine is by providing English lessons so they can learn the English language. But it also stands for eternal, because Jesus is the eternal way, and we want to point the people to Jesus and what he can do for their lives, how he can change their lives. And so back in 2000, I went on a mission trip to Ukraine for just 1 week. It got cut short because of COVID, because people were afraid that that because of COVID that the USA was going to shut down all its borders. And so like any other mission trip that was happening that spring break, everyone rushed back to America to make sure that we were safe. But in leaving, my heart was still connected with this country. And at the time, I was serving as a youth pastor at a church in Rockdale, Texas. But I knew I wanted to go back. In my mind, I just assumed that'd be another 1 week trip sometime in the future, but the Lord had other plans for me. The Lord called me to full-time mission work in Ukraine, and started in September of 2021. And then shortly after that, if you track history, I know it seems like it hasn't been that long, but in the February of 2022 is when the full-scale invasion in Ukraine began. There had already been some stuff before that, but this was the full-scale invasion, and the Lord continued to call me to stay there, to continue to serve him, had complete peace about being there, about doing his work in Ukraine. Where I am, I got a map here on the screen. Our ministry is based in Chernivtsi, the oblast, but specifically the city of Chernivtsi within this region of Ukraine. So we are in the smallest oblast in Ukrainian. It's kind of like a county. It's divided up, as you see all the different colors, into these different sections. Ours is the smallest section of the entire country. And we're right on the border of Romania and a little bit of Moldova as well. But and so that's where the ministry of E-Way started, in Odessa, not Texas, but Odessa, Ukraine, but moved and has moved to this city of Chernivtsi. And so so that's where I go to when I go to serve over in Ukraine. Have to, take different modes of transportation to get there, but through all the hurdles, all the difficulties, I continue to trust the Lord and that He has called me to be there. It's amazing the peace that He has given me, and I know it comes through His power, through the prayer of His people who are praying for me as I'm there. But I have a peace when I'm there. I'm never stressed or worried about my life or the danger it can be in. That doesn't mean that everything is always perfect and easy. While there has been no direct attacks on our region where I'm at, we still feel the effects of war in our area, through it being power outages or refugees. There are still effects, and I'll go into a little bit those more near the end. But God has been just my strength through it all. And I want to share with you, at first, just kind of some of the basics about our ministry and what we do there. And then I'm going to go into a little bit more details with some unique specific examples and then some unique specific people to be praying for, as well as some of the things that we have been doing this year. So our ministry is made up of just 3 missionaries, and that's the next photo here is myself, our director, Abby Ferguson, and Becky Sandin, who's she's been there about 2 years longer than I have, and Abby's been there like forever. She started she started E-Way, so it's been, I think, 11 years for her of going to Ukraine and serving there. And so it's just the 3 of us. We're the 3 missionaries. There's no like organization beyond us. The E-Way Missions does have like a board of directors based in the U.S. And things like that, but it's just the 3 of us, which is both liberating as a missionary that we get to follow God's leading and we don't have to do anything anyone else tells us that we don't feel comfortable doing. We follow what the Lord leads. Our director told us when the war began, if we didn't feel like staying, we didn't have to stay. If we felt like we should go home, we could. And so, but also there's no one forcing us to go home because it's just the 3 of us. Because I know in other mission organizations, they might have sent people home in these situations and not encouraged them to stay. So, but it's just the 3 of us serving there, and at times it can be challenging. Just the 3 of us. We're the 3 only North Americans in a wide area. Occasionally, we'll run into 1 or 2 people in the country that are from North America, but mostly it's just the 3 of us. And so we have to really rely on one another and support one another. We meet weekly to pray together and to check up on one another to make sure that we're doing well spiritually and staying focused. But our organization is not just the 3 of us. We're the 3 missionaries there. Our organization is bigger than that, and that's the next photo. This is it's made up of many Ukrainians who serve alongside us, Christians through the church that we're connected with, and some from other churches who serve with us. This was taken at the beginning of our year of teaching, so this was back in September of 2023, and this was our team, and this isn't even everybody. This is majority of them, but as you can see by this next picture, this is still our team, but this is at the end of the year. This is in May. Now, you might not be able to tell because you can't compare the photos because we just changed from one to the other, but there's some differences. There's some people that left in that time. We have some people that served in our ministry, some Ukrainians who are now living in America. We have some that are in other parts of Europe that have left the country. We have some that are just, were serving with us for a while as either English teachers or in other areas, but felt the Lord leading them to serve in new areas in the church. And so our ministry constantly changes. It's one thing that we continually trust the Lord with because all of them are volunteers. Abby, Becky, and I, we choose to be there, and we know we're there for E-Way, for what we're doing, but that's our entire life. The rest of them have jobs. They serve in the church in other ways, where sometimes they're second or third ministry within the church. And as you can see, there's some like little kids. Some people have families, and so it can be a challenge sometimes to find the people we need to serve. Just because all churches experience that at some point, finding the right people. People come and go, but our ministry is built upon the fact that we're going to offer English classes to Ukrainians to come learn, and we have two parts of that. One is a grammar class, and the other is a conversation class. The grammar classes are taught by Ukrainians who have studied English grammar and can teach it well. The last time that I learned English grammar was a long time ago. I don't know what grade. I guess you learned it like most of. I don't know if you learned it in high school. I can't even remember what year I stopped learning English grammar. My students ask me all the time English questions. I'm like, I don't know the grammar rules. I really don't. I don't know what a phrasal verb is. If you know, that's good for you. I don't know what that is because I don't think about grammar I just speak the language. And so the missionaries, we teach a conversation class so they can practice speaking English with someone who speaks it natively. And so that they can learn how to actually pronounce things correctly, to have a conversation. Because as you all know, in our conversations, we break all the grammar rules that have been established in our grammar textbooks. We don't follow. Y'all all know this, right? Yeah. So they like to hear from people who actually speak the language. So these are a couple pictures of my classes. I have a few different ones here. And in these classes, our curriculum is the Bible, and so we have a English-Ukrainian Bible that has both has English on one side of the page and Ukrainian on the other, and we will teach them new words out of Bible stories, usually looking at through the Gospels. This last year we're kind of looking at Mark and Luke, and then some of Acts near the end of the year. This next year we're going to be going through the book of John throughout the year. And just looking at different Bible stories, and they learn new words from these Bible stories. And we don't use King James version of the Bible because we want to teach them current English words that they might actually use. But we use kind of I believe it's not even a translation that I use normally, but it's International Standard Version, ISV. And so we use this version of English along with a kind of a close connection Ukrainian Bible that we can, and we use this to teach them both English but also about God and what Jesus has done for their lives, how he died on the cross for them. And so we go through the year teaching in these classes, and that's a big part of our ministry is these classes. But we also invite the students to things outside of these classes. Like this next photo is from our Saturday speaking club that we do every Saturday from 5 to 7 in the evening. We have worship time. We have some games that challenge them in their English. We will have some discussion on a topic, which usually starts kind of general, kind of worldly kind of focus on the topic, and then we go into what the Bible says and go deeper with how God answers these questions in life. And then we'll always, you can go to the next photo. This is kind of, so we'll have these discussion at tables based on their levels of English, whether they're beginner, pre-intermediate level, upper intermediate, things like that. And we have these conversations at the tables so that they can go in depth in these discussions. And then we usually, with the next photo, we have a speaker that'll come and share a testimony for about 15 minutes about how God has impacted their life based kind of around the topic we discussed. And so many times they're getting the gospel shared with them. And this is kind of our base structure of our ministry. But it goes beyond that in so many different ways. And so that's kind of the basic thing that we do. But it's expanded over the years. We've added new things. And I want to share with you some of those, just some of the ways that we just live life with the people, with our students, because that's a lot of it. We get the example of discipleship by the way that Jesus lived with his disciples. He walked with them. And they were a bunch of boneheads who didn't know anything about what he was really there to do. and some of them not till after he had risen from the dead did they finally realize what he was there to do. And so, but he showed the example that you don't just disciple someone when they accept Jesus. You can walk with people to show them who Jesus is by the way that you live and by the way that you love. And so we do that with the students that we serve. Our director, Abby, decided this year, one thing that she wanted to do on a kind of not every Sunday afternoon, but rotating. Next, can I go through the next picture? All right. She wanted to offer volleyball, just a social kind of time to get students together, get them outdoors. And so we have this kind of net that we'll set up for ourselves out on a field next to a school on a Sunday when obviously the schools are not using it. And we just kind of have some social time where we play with students, we talk with them, we build relationships with them. This was something new that kind of started this year. I've had the blessed opportunity of building relationships not only with my students, but with just the people that we serve with. So this year, back in September, I was able to perform my second Ukrainian wedding. This is my second Ukrainian wedding. Third wedding overall in my entire life. 2 of them have been in Ukraine. So now Ukraine has beaten American weddings that I've performed as a pastor. But yes, and so the bride is one of our grammar teachers, Veronica, and her husband, Edek, has served in our ministry for a long time, but he had to stop serving because he was recruited into the military and now serves in the military. And so, but it was a joy to be able to just, these kind of relationships that we're building there, that I did not think that this is something that I would do when I decided to be a missionary in Ukraine. I was like, I did not think that I'd be performing weddings, especially since I have to have a translator there, someone to translate, because most of the audience doesn't understand what I'm saying because they don't speak English. A lot of their parents and their family are like, what is this? Why is this guy up there talking? He doesn't even speak Ukrainian. But I do one portion of the ceremony I did do in Ukrainian, which was the vows that they repeat after me, because I just thought in my mind that's confusing. If I'm going to be translated, I'm going to say repeat after me, and then I'm going to say something, and then it's going to be said in Ukrainian as a translation. Which one do they repeat? And so it's like, just cut out the middleman. I'll just learn the Ukrainian for that one. So, but another thing that we've been doing just over these past 2 years is opening times where people could just come meet us in cafes. And so this is a cafe that I would just go to every week for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I would just sit down, and if people showed up, they showed up. If this was one of the biggest nights. It didn't always have this many people. Sometimes it would only have like 4 or 3, but sometimes we'd have large groups like this show up. But we would just sit around and we would talk. Sometimes I would play games with them to practice their English. Sometimes I have these kind of question cards that I would ask them to get the kind of conversation going. But it's just kind of, again, pouring into people's lives, building relationships with them. And so this was kind of like I want to say this was kind of October maybe. Might have been late September, early October that this photo was taken. And amazing thing, this was taken in May. This is on a special holiday in Ukraine called Vyshyvanka Day, which is the Ukrainian clothing that they're wearing. Oh no, go back! Don't, you went ahead too far. And so what was amazing is the first year that we tried this out, I maybe had 1 or 2 people that were consistent to come and meet with me and have conversations. I had this year was again a blessing, answered prayer that I've been praying to God about, that I would have a larger group, that I would build community. The fact that I had so many, and it wasn't all just ladies. There's a guy taking the photo that you can't see. That I'm taking a photo as well as this guy next to me. So, it was great to continually build these relationships, because one of the go back. We're still not going forward. I'll let you know. But one of the great things about this group right here is only one of them is one of our grammar teachers for Eway, and she goes to another English club that has nothing to do with our ministry, that's not ministry related at all, and she brings some of her friends from that English club to my coffee time, what we call it, coffee time. And so it's people that have no encounter with anything else that we do with our ministry except through me in this 1 hour and a half, 2 hours every Thursday evening. And that's just been a blessing to me to be able to have that opportunity to pour into their lives, and to just see that, to build those relationships, because this, like I said, most of them, besides the three on the right side, those three are kind of connected to our ministry, our E-Way ministry, but the other three would come to this Thursday event. And it's just a blessing to see how God has continued to pour into their lives, that they've continued to come, and they were so connected with this time that they wanted to continue it over the summer, even though I was gone. So I'm excited to be able to go back and know that this won't have dropped off, that I'll still be able to continue to pour in and build those relationships and to point them to the Lord. But we also have fun together. We celebrate things while we're over there. You know, it's not just all work. Like this next photo is Canadian missionary Becky. It was her birthday, so we had a fun time going out to dinner for her, and so we do that. We celebrate things like that. We have fun times together. This next photo is from the church that our ministry is partnered with, Blagodat Church, which Blagodat in Ukrainian means grace. This is their Easter. This isn't like the service. This was after Easter. They had like snacks and coffee and things out in the kind of common area outside the worship room. But it was amazing because this was the first year that churches started celebrating Easter not on the Eastern Orthodox calendar like a lot of the Russian Orthodox churches, but on more of the our calendar. So it was the same day as Easter here in America, which it hadn't been. It usually was on a completely different calendar date every year. So, but it's, again, just like within our ministry, the church, there's this community. There's encouraged to invite people. They have all these like free snacks and things as a gift as people leave, to encourage just, again, spending time together and sharing the love of the Lord together. And then at the end of our school year for our ministry, we always do a picnic because, it's May, it's good picnic weather. And so this is the crowd of people that came to our picnic this year. It is a lot of people. I feel like it was larger than the previous year. And that's always kind of just a blessing on our hearts, because sometimes as the year progresses, people start to get busy with other things. Sometimes our numbers in our classes drop off and people stop coming. And this year was, again, a strong consistency within our students, even to seeing this large group that came to this picnic. And I've got another picture from the picnic as well. Again, it's hard to say, not the woman on the far right, but the woman in the black coat right next to her. She was one of the ones who only came to my Thursday coffee time. And this was the first thing of our ministry beyond my coffee time that she actually came to. So things that I was just praising God for, just the fact that she was getting more connected within our ministry. And my hope is that that this next year we'll see even more connection through other events that we do. And I'll talk about those events in a moment. But this is kind of, just some examples of the day-to-day life that we live. It's not always, parties or, picnics and things like that. It is a lot of work with people, which, if anyone who either is a pastor, minister, or maybe even some people who could relate, maybe therapists, know that getting in the lives of people is difficult. You want to help them, you want to support them, but it can wear you down. And that's most of my job is dealing with people, both our students, and then also one of my responsibilities is kind of to have a pastoral role over our volunteers, to make sure that they're spiritually doing well, to meet with them on a regular basis, to check in on them and how they're doing. And I'm by nature, I'm an introvert. I'd be much happier to not talk to people most of my life. But, you know, the Lord calls us out of our comfort zone and into the things we're most uncomfortable with to show His glory, and that it's not me that does these things, it's Him through me, because I wouldn't do this. I wouldn't devote my entire life to a people-focused thing, because that's just not my comfortable state. But that's the beauty of the Lord. He shows us what He can do through us, and that it's not based on what we think we're good at, but on what He can do, and He can do anything. So now I kind of want to talk about a few specific people. We've seen them in some of the photos, but I want to talk about them specifically by name. The first one is a man named Max. I have this young man. He's 19 years old, and he is been attached to our ministry since he arrived in the city. He's not originally from Chernovtsi. He's from Zaporizhia region, and which is farther west part of Ukraine. Not all the way west, but more west than we are for sure. And he came to the city and started looking for ways to improve his English. He found our ministry, and back in spring of 2023, he started just coming to my coffee times, coming to our Saturday events, because it was too late to join any classes. And then, so this entire year, on average, I see him at least 5 times a week, sometimes more, depending on what's going on. He was in my class on Monday. I would see him for sure on Thursday, usually at my coffee time. Friday for my home group, which I do a home group Bible study every Friday evening. See him on Saturday. And then if like Sunday, if we got together for volleyball or something, like I would see him then as well. And occasionally there'd be an extra time on either Tuesday or Wednesday where I might run into him. But so I'm seeing this young man all the time through our ministry. And God really has laid him on my heart. I would love to tell you that he has accepted Jesus, but he has not yet. I know it's still something he's working through. I have a lot of the Lord has blessed me with my Friday Bible study for the longest time, for at least a couple months, was mostly lost people who did not know much or anything about Jesus. I had 3 consistent people who really didn't know about Jesus for multiple months, and I think probably in like November and December, and then so when we kind of take a break in January, or like in the end of December, beginning of January. So when I was starting back to do my Bible study on Fridays, I was thinking I've got these lost people that just don't know anything about what it means to believe in God, what it means to put your faith in Him. So I was like, so let's just start at the base level. So I don't, this is a big word that most Christians don't know, unless you maybe have some Catholic background, but because it's more prominent there. But it's the word catechism. Anybody, Pastor, you know that word? Yeah, I know that word. Catechism is basically a way to share what we believe about the Bible through a question-answer method. You ask a question, then you go to the Bible and see what the Bible says, and then you kind of give the answer to that. And so it goes through. I found one that was more modern, that was kind of used more modern English, that would be easier for them to understand. It completely agrees with everything that we believe in the church, but I wanted to go through that with them so they could understand who is God. Questions like, when we talk about that Jesus is God, we know, what is this Trinity that you're talking about? We went through all these things. We went through the reason why, God gave the law, what is sin? And so we worked our way through that this whole spring, going through, why we need a Redeemer, who that Redeemer is, why Jesus saved us, what He saved us from, how He's the only one that can save us, and that there's nothing we do to save, just the whole thing. And so I went through that with Friday, and Max being there every week, my prayer is continually that this just continues to just stir in his heart, and that the Lord moves within him. I know there's unless some unforeseen circumstance happens, he'll still be there when I get back in Ukraine in August. And I look forward to continuing this ministry with him, of just walking with him and showing him the love of Jesus. And so he's on my heart constantly, that he would come to faith in the Lord Jesus, just because I see him so much. He's like a little brother, like just someone that I'm just kind of walking alongside and discipling, and so just be in prayer for Max, that his family's also live in the city, so like his mom also comes to our classes, and then he's got a dad and a younger sister, and so just be in prayer for Max, that the Lord would just move in his heart. We want to leave it up to the Lord's timing. We don't want to force anyone to make a decision they don't actually believe in, and so, but I'm just constantly calling him to make a decision, and hoping that he will. Kind of similar to Max, but in a different way, is the next person I want to talk about. Her name is Katya. She's right there in the middle, in kind of the gray. Katya has been attending our E-Way classes for many years. Her mom attends, her younger brother attends as well. She wants to teach English. She's smart, and she's, I think she's just at like 18 as well. She's like 18, 19, somewhere in there. And she wanted to kind of, we asked her to be a translator for us, because we don't have, for our grammar teachers, they have to be Christians if they're teaching within our ministry. But for translators, we can get students who want to maybe practice some more and grow. And so she became my translator, because I had a beginner level class, actually a basic level class, who some of them didn't even know their alphabet in English. And so she was my translator for that. And so, but she was also in my class, so she was another one I saw multiple times a week. Monday for class, Tuesday as she translated for the class that we taught together. And then she started coming to my home group on Friday, and sometimes to my coffee time on Thursdays, and then speak up, and so we see her many times during the week. Her situation is a little bit different. I feel like she's getting there to where she might believe. The problem is, in her household, her mother would never allow her to change faith. I believe they're Orthodox background. Her cousin is a man named Valak that I'll talk about in a little bit. He is a member of our ministry. He serves in the church. He leads worship and does many things. And so he's got a great influence on that family. And but I think just kind of the mother kind of controls it. And unless she makes a hard decision, she wouldn't allow her children to make one. So so my prayer is just still, again, for Katya, that she would come to faith in Christ. The next picture I have is of Vlad and Nadia. Vlad and Nadia made me so happy when near the end of April they started wanting to come to my home group, because at that point I had non-believers in my home group, and I knew based on how things that she had said that Nadia was for sure a believer. Like it was obvious in their conversation. She would come and sit at my tables at our speaking event on Saturdays, and so I'd have conversations. And I believe Vlad, which is her boyfriend, also, he's just not as outspoken. It's guys don't speak a lot about their feelings. And in fact, if a guy were to cry in Ukraine, he would be looked down upon very much by many of the other men. Just not an okay thing. So I think he just kind of keeps to himself for the most part. But I was glad they started coming to my home group. And they started getting more involved. They got connected with our ministry through our English camp that we did for the first time last August, and they've been sometimes attending church with us, but they've been students in my class throughout the year. And so I was excited that they started coming to my home group, because Nadia at least would speak up and actually have some input on some of the Christian questions that I would ask, because she knew things. And shortly before I left in May, they both went forward in the church to ask to be baptized in the church. So it's a praise that they are getting connected, that I believe they both were Christians, but for sure the pastors of the church are going to talk with them through this before baptism to make sure that they do believe and they know what they believe. But so it's a joy in my heart that they came forward, and that's definitely been a praise as for our ministry as well, to see the changes and the connection with this couple. And so just be in prayer for Vlad and Nadia as they continue to grow in their faith, continue to get involved in the church, and that the church is able to help them grow and help support them. And then lastly, the last person I want to mention is a young man named Sasha. I love this. I love this guy. Some Ukrainians are hard on themselves when it comes to their English. They never think they're good enough. If somebody speaks up, they're like, "Oh, they spoke so well. I don't want to speak now because I don't want to look bad compared to them." Sasha is really good with his English, but constantly doubts himself. Constantly doesn't think he's good enough. I try to encourage him wherever I can, but he's a very deep thinker. And so he's been coming to my home group and absorbing these things about God, and I could tell that he's thinking through them. Again, someone that I'm praying that comes to faith but hasn't yet. But I can tell he's working through these things. I can actually see stuff going on in his mind. So be in prayer for him that the Lord just continues the work in him, that God is able to make a change in his life, and that whether it's I know even this summer he went with I believe it's a missions organization that was taking supplies to an eastern part of Ukraine. It was, I think, an American missions organization, and I was told that he went with that group to help deliver those supplies. And so I'm excited to, get back and hear kind of his experience with that and what God has been doing in his life. But be in prayer for Sasha. I want to share also some of the ministry. Since the last time I shared last summer, we did our first ever E-Way English camp, which was a big event, and I was kind of telling you a little bit about it last summer, but I want to share with you I'm going to share mostly some photos, but I'll talk a little bit about it. So we had 50 students, which was an amazing blessing from God, and amongst those 50 students is about 30 volunteers, 20 from Ukraine and from the missionaries who were always there, and then 10 that we had short-term missionaries that came for just 1 week to serve with us for that week. It was a great week. I polled a lot of the students after the week was over, and everyone loved the time there. And so it worked. It worked differently than a youth camp, for instance. And it was really hard because even Ukrainians have their own idea what camp means, and we were trying to no, this is going to be educational. It's not just going to be fun times 24/7. And so it was hard for everyone because this was a unique camp for everyone. It was new to me in many ways. It was new to the Ukrainians in many ways. But it got such high praise from the students that we know that we followed the Lord and that we followed his leading in what transpired. We did have fun, as this next photo will show you. We had a giant saran wrap ball full of prizes that lasted the entire week. So that was kind of our morning fun thing at the beginning of the day to start things off. But every morning they would have grammar classes, and then they would have conversation classes, which you have some pictures of the classes here. They would have these every morning. And then so about an hour and 15 for each of those, and then they would have lunch, and then in the afternoon they would have what we call master class, and where they would learn different things. We had one on first aid, one on swimming, we had one on learning American football or American baseball, because they were really interested in learning these sports. The one picture I have up here is of kind of like watercolor. We had a watercolor one, and so we had different things that they could learn, different skills or different information, again, challenging their English. But we met every evening. We would meet in this large room and have worship, and we had a speaker for the week who would come share the gospel as well. So they were hearing it in the morning in their conversation lessons, and then going deeper in the evening. We would have a time of worship too, which I think is the next photo. You can see kind of from behind our worship band leading the worship. And then after the speaking, we would have them break off into their groups and discuss what they learned. Just kind of basic questions like, what did you learn about God? How can you apply this to your life type questions. And it was a great week. I'm still amazed that it went as well as it did. We had, there was problems here and there. The camp staff constantly wanted to change when they were going to serve us food and not the time that we had already established with them of when we asked for the meal to be served. And so there was issues here and there that we had to deal with. My role was director of the camp, so a lot of those headaches fell on me. But as director, you also get your own private room, and you don't have to share with other people, so it was really bonus. Again, introvert, I had my time. I was around people 24/7 pretty much, except for like 4 or 5 hours at night when I got to sleep. But that was so new. And then after that, when we started to pray about what we were going to do this next year, both in the full year and then coming in this summer, the Lord laid on our heart to do something new within this year that we just finished, which was something that we called our E-Way Speaking Retreat. And so yeah, this is kind of one of our first meetings about the retreat with our team that was planning it. And so we decided to do this retreat. This retreat was out in the mountains. Where we're located is very much near the Carpathian Mountains, and so it doesn't take maybe an hour or two to go and look and get in some beautiful mountains. We really weren't happy about the snow because it made getting up the mountain a little bit more harder than we wanted it to, especially we were hauling a trailer behind a bus, and at one point the bus got stuck, but those things happen. But we were up in the mountains for this weekend. Again, this was a completely new event. We had never done anything like this before. We didn't bring in people from North America to come be a part of this. We just kind of worked with our own Ukrainian staff with this. And so, yeah, we had meetings. You can see in the next couple photos. Becky was kind of in charge of this event, which was, I got to relax a lot for this event. It was great. After camp, I didn't want to do this one, but yeah, we had fun together. But they also kind of broke up into discussion groups where they weren't really learning English grammar this weekend. They were more going through. We kind of had the main theme of being. What does it mean to be a friend of God? Kind of based on Jesus talking to his disciples, saying, "No longer do I call you servants, I call you my friend." And so, what does it mean that we're friends of God? And so we look in the morning at like what does it mean to be just friends in like human relationships, and then we'd look at that kind of correlation with what does it mean to be a friend of God in the evening. And so it was a great weekend. We had a lot of fun. We did some crazy activities. Like this next photo is. We were doing this like big quest, kind of like escape room type thing that was supposed to last an hour, ended up lasting like 3 hours. It was crazy. It was all in English though, so it was very difficult for some people. Even English speakers, it was difficult to understand some of these riddles and clues and how to solve things. We also had a 1920s themed night, which a lot of people got into and got dressed up for. They love dressing up for themed nights. And doing things like that, so we had a lot of fun with that. And then this next picture is just kind of our team that kind of put everything together and made it all happen. And it was just again another great opportunity to go deeper with a lot of these students. At this time in our Saturday event that we do every Saturday, we were seeing less and less students in the pre-intermediate level of English. We would have a lot of the ones that would come for upper level or a lot for basic, but our pre-intermediate level was there wasn't a whole lot of students that were showing up. After this event, the attendance rose heavily, and we had a lot of these pre-intermediate level students, a lot of them young teenage level age kids as well, coming to our Saturday event who hadn't been coming before. So more opportunities to share with them the love of God and the message of the gospel. Another new thing that we had going on this year is we started doing mission work to help some of the Ukrainians further west in Ukraine in the region of Kherson, which you skip to the next photo. It takes almost a day pretty much you got to leave like at 5 in the morning, if not earlier, and then you get there sometime around 6. So it takes about 12 plus hours to get there from where we are. The roads are not always smooth because of bombs and potholes because of bombs. But we decided to do a partnership with this region. We're working with a church there to help people in the surrounding villages. And And so, village is an interesting term. It's because depending on which country you're in, village can mean different things. It's like really small towns, not even like the small towns in Texas where there's still like a downtown Main Street. Smaller than that. They might even be, might even be considered a city in some parts of Texas. I used to live in one of those towns where it had a gas station and that's about it. And so there's these towns like this that around the main city of Kherson where we started partnering with to help in different ways. This first trip with this group here, they took a lot of medicine that isn't easy to get in that area, and things to help with like food and water, and also things for like winter. In January, which is the next couple of photos, we worked together to get a bunch of gifts to give to the kids to help them have a Christmas. And so these gifts were pretty much kind of like similar to Operation Christmas Child type things that you put in a box, but we gathered everything there in Ukraine and took it and delivered it in January to the kids in these different villages. So they'd go around to different villages, deliver these things, give them Bibles, give them, there was other things that happened as well, sharing the message of the gospel in each village that they went to. I think I got one more photo of that as well. Yeah, them just handing things out, needs. And then the third trip that we went on, which one that I was supposed to go on, but then I got a kidney stone that didn't want to leave my kidney, and that knocked me out from going. But this next one was mostly focused on building playgrounds in these different villages because either they didn't have them already or they were damaged. Some of them that did have some, they fixed up, like this photo and then in the next one of them painting and fixing up. They would polish, then paint, like sand down, and then paint the swings and things like that. But then there were some that they built completely, and this is all built new things that they put. In each of these swing set places, they would place a little image with a QR code, which if people were to scan it, would take them to a bunch of resources, one of them being Bible stories for kids, all this in Ukrainian, one being just like a Bible app. They could read the Bible, other things, helpful things for adults and parents that, and so I think they did, 13 of these, over 13 villages in a week, along with doing a special youth night at the church every evening to help with the youth in that area in the main city of Kherson. And so this is a kind of a partnership that we've been working with our church there that we're connected with to help reach the people in this region and just kind of help them with their needs, because this is an area where at one point it was occupied, the Russian military has been pushed out, but it's still very dangerous. You still hear shelling, you still hear, throughout the night, our teams that have gone, would hear bombs going off and things like that, and then they said after a few nights you could tell which ones were, missiles flying overhead and which ones were, they could start to tell the difference based on the noise. You spend there enough time there, and so we're working with those areas to help in whatever way we can. Sometimes those helping gets limited because of the war and because of sometimes in regions they restrict any foreigners from being able to go in there. Shortly after our trip in February, there was supposed to be another trip, I think, in April, but that got canceled because they weren't allowing people really to come into that area right at that moment. And so we're not sure how we'll be able to continue working with this part of our ministry to help, but those kind of updates and things, mostly I'll probably end up usually posting on my social media and things like that. But if you're interested in how you can help with those, right now I'm not sure what our next step with that is. Later, after I'm finished, if you do, I know I've handed some of these out last year, but I got these little cards. On the back is a QR code with my social media things as well. And if I don't post all the time because I'm just horrible at social media, I really am. But when I do, it's usually because of things like this. I know I mail a letter to the church with things that are going on in the ministry as well. But if you want, you can get one of those later. But one of the things that we're needing, I know a lot of people ask, what do you need? this year, what does your ministry need? And one of our needs right now is with our camp coming up. Our camp, we had to choose a different location. The location we got was a good deal for the last year's camp. Problem is, they want us paying cash, which meant they weren't paying taxes, which is a little sketchy, and it's a lot of cash to hand to somebody. But some of these things happen in Ukraine. But also, they were already booked up when we wanted to schedule for this next summer, so we had to pick a place that was a little farther away. And so because of that, it's about 4.5 to 5 hours away, so that's more expensive on transportation, on buses to get the students there. There's also the difficulty is anytime you leave a different region of Ukraine, even sometimes when you leave a city, there are military checkpoints where if young men are of a certain age to be recruited to the military, they will try to recruit them right there. And so we're not sure how that's going to really affect our attendance as far as young men. We know if they're at a young enough age, they'll be okay, and it won't be a problem. But so we're pray with us about that, just that we'll have students sign up. Right now we have 29 for sure that I believe are coming, but we still have a few more weeks of registration to raise that. But if you would like to sponsor a student to go to camp, again, the price has increased. We increased the price on them, but not as much as the total cost for a student. And so I think you got jump 2 slides ahead. So yeah, if you'd like to sponsor a student, $250 how much it costs to send a student. Now again, not all, most of the students will probably pay what it costs them, but it won't be enough to actually cover the $250 on their end. So really, sometimes if you give $250, you might be covering 2 students, the rest of what they owe to go to this camp. But if you'd like to sponsor a student, you can do that. And like I said, there's a link through the QR codes to how to give through our E-Way missions organizations. It's all tax deductible. You can give me the money, but I would rather you give it directly to E-Way. That way there's no questions on what happened to your money, and people don't ask me questions or things don't look bad on my part. Or if you want to give it to the church and then they can make a donation to E-Way, you can do that as well through that. You just make sure, mark things on that. So that's one thing to be praying about. One for the camp itself, that because, again, this year they lowered the recruitment rate for young men from 27 to 25, and a few of our heavily involved volunteers are at that age where they could be recruited. And so it's very difficult for them right now. They want to serve, they want to help, but it's hard to commit to helping because of the fact that they might be recruited into the military. So it makes our volunteer pool from our church there a lot less, because there's only certain people that feel safe to go with us because the new camp location is further away where they'll have to go through multiple checkpoints to get there. And I can probably discuss in more detail on if one or two of you might have questions about that. I know I'm about to go over the hour, but basically every Ukrainian young man usually has to serve 2 years in the military after they finish primary school before they go to university. Or if they go to, I think if they can also, if they go to university, they have to serve 2 years if they don't go to university immediately. Or if they go to university, they have to serve it after or get a government-type job and work that for 2 years. So 25, they have no choice. If someone says go into the military, they have to. But some of the younger ones than 25 can still be made to go into the military because they're still at an age where they might have to serve the 2 years that every Ukrainian young man has to serve. So a lot of those are kind of the issues right now we're dealing with our camp, and so we're praying through that, praying that the God will send the right people. It might be a smaller camp than we had last year, and we're going to be okay with that because we know whatever happens, it's going to be in God's hands, and we know this is His will and what we're doing. Again, a lot of that as a director falls on me as well. If things go wrong, they point the finger at me. But I'm trusting the Lord on this one, so be in prayer for that. Another area you can be praying about, this one, It's not that big, but it tends to, be on my mind, and I'm trying not to let it worry me too much. But the next slide, pray for the electrical issues in Ukraine. I know we all kind of dealt with electrical issues for a little bit. Since I left, about a day or two before I left in May, they've been having rolling blackouts. Sometimes, this is one of the most extreme ones that I've seen, where I think at the most they had 8 hours of electricity on during their day, and the rest of the day was without. But every day is like this. They get a new schedule every day where different hours it's on and different hours they're off, and so they have to be paying attention every day to know, hey, when will I have power? When will I be able to charge things? When will I be able to wash clothes? When will I be able to, use electricity? And so be in prayer for the electrical issues. I know things are being worked on right now. I don't know I don't really worry about this for our camp because most campgrounds have generators. A lot of businesses have generators there as well. But it's mostly for people in their homes, elderly people who it's not as hot. Most of the time it's not as hot in Ukraine as it is here, but they've actually been having some increased heat over this last week, and actually experiencing numbers up into hundreds, which they don't always have there. And so be in prayer for just the people there. I know my apartment where I live is block 13, which is the one at the very bottom, and that's showing like the full 24-hour clock. And green is you're sure to have electricity. Mostly. The red is for sure not, and there's a little gray box that says maybe it could be, so might go a little bit over, might go a little bit under, and so you're not guaranteed necessarily those full 2 hours of the gray and the green. You're guaranteed at least 4 on that schedule, and that was just yesterday. This is the schedule from yesterday for the electricity in Ukraine. Today it was a different schedule, but I didn't have time to update my picture. But so just be in prayer for the situation there. Also in my city, we've had a lot of plumbing issues, and they're trying to replace and get better pipes in, but I keep up with stuff within the city online, and it seems like every day there's different areas that don't have any water working because of things having to change. So not a whole lot of water working, not a whole lot of electricity. It's like, really, what do you have when you go back? So I'm not really worried. This doesn't keep me from wanting to go back, but it's definitely, I'm more concerned for the people that are suffering through this right now. And the last kind of way that I would ask you to pray, I've mentioned it in a few different ways, but pray for the Ukrainian men who are serving in our ministry. These are 3 specific ones: Valak, Dima, and Alex. Valak was supposed to be recruited into the military. He turned 25 on Monday, and so he was supposed to be recruited on Tuesday, but he was in the hospital for some diabetic issues. Even though he struggles with diabetes and he has seizures, they're still not giving him a medical reason for not getting into the military. So his job, because with his job he had to let them know if he's going to be recruited, and so they let him go from his job back on the 12th. So now he is without a job, unsure if he's going to be taken in the military at any point, and he's so just be in prayer for him. Specifically, he and I are really good friends, and so I'm really concerned for him, and I know both him and his wife, it's difficult, really difficult time for them. And so just be in prayer for him and for the other men. There's some men who are serving the Lord and doing God's work, and they're staying in their country and they want to keep the country going, but they don't really want to be at the front line holding a gun doing that. And so it's difficult. It's a new thing that I've had to deal with in my own life, how to counsel someone going through this, because like I said, he and I are friends. We talk a lot about this, and growing up, you would hear, I would hear stories of people that, draft dodgers in the Vietnam War, and you think, basically everything you're told about is negative things about them, and you're like, now I'm seeing people who are going through this, who are not wanting to serve, and it's very much different. Granted, it's not my country, so it's a different situation in total. And it's a different war in total. It's not the same as the Vietnam War, but it's difficult to know how to counsel someone, how to give them good biblical advice on what they should do. There are people that try to leave the country illegally to avoid this, But my friend Volek, he's stayed. He's continued to serve because he serves the Lord, and he knows the Lord wants him there to continue to serve in the church. And so be in prayer for these men. And that's about all. I mean, I could go on, like I said, when the Lord lets me, when I get opportunities to talk about the things the Lord has on my heart that I'm passionate about, I could talk your ear off. But I realize we're well over an hour, and but I do want to thank you so much. I mean, if we have time, if anyone wants to ask questions, I can do some of that. But if not, you can also come and ask me afterwards if you want to go into more detail. If you do make a donation tonight, I won't be gone from the camera too long. Let's see. If you make a donation tonight towards our camp, I do have a little bracelet that I'll give you as a thank you. It basically says, it's got a little heart there, and then around it is the word for in Ukrainian, the letter for I, so it's like I, Ya, and the heart, love, Ukraine, Ukraine. So you can get one of those if you want to make a donation tonight. Again, you don't have to give me the money, but if you make a donation, let me know, and you can get one of those to continue to be praying for our camp, as a reminder to be praying for what the Lord will do. Our camp is going to be focused on discovering who Jesus says he is by looking at his I am statements, like I am the bread of life, I am the way, the truth, and the life, I am the resurrection and the life, all these things we're going to be looking at and letting them truly understand who Jesus says he is, not who people say Jesus is, but who Jesus says about what he says about himself. And so that's kind of our theme for the camp, and so we're excited for people to know Jesus through this camp. And so I think that's it for me.
Yes, sir. Okay, so I wanted to take a second to see if anybody had anything you wanted to ask of Sean tonight. Great presentation. I think I learned stuff this year I didn't learn last year, so I've enjoyed that. So anybody have something you'd just like to ask him about Ukraine, about E-Way, about him? Anybody? Speak now, or... Yes, sir.
Whenever, because for like our retreat and other events like that, when we had to make sure there was, especially for our volunteers, he was questioning about, what documents do I have to have, or we had the church come up with like a whole explanation as to what we're doing, why we're going there, to show to the checkpoints. Each of the Ukrainians, they have to have a little card with them showing their stuff. For me, I just show them my passport. I keep that with me when I go through these things, because I show them my passport, they see I'm American, they ignore it. To stay there, I have what's known as a temporary residency card that I have to renew every year that lets me stay more than the traditional, travel time of 2 weeks. Usually, I think is most general countries' travel time that they allow you to travel for vacation. And so I usually keep all those documents with me. In fact, the other day I actually gave someone, when I was supposed to give them my license, I gave them my residency card to Ukraine, because that's my primary card that I have in my wallet. My license is buried behind something else. So, to travel around, I don't worry necessarily for myself. There have been instances where on the street, because sometimes military recruitment can just grab people off the street and throw them in a van and take them down to the recruitment center. There has been 1 or 2 instances where they've done that to a person who wasn't Ukrainian, but that doesn't happen very often. I don't think they haven't. So far, they haven't tried to recruit me on the street. So yeah, it is a thought that goes through my head as I walk around, but it's not anything I worry about.
I'm sure.
Anything else?
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
When we don't have power, what do you do? Well, everyone has a power bank with them for their phones, and so they're usually pretty good on there. A lot of times, like with restaurants and stores, they'll have a generator, and so if you're out, you might, a lot of times, because we dealt with this back in winterish of 2022 to this kind of February of 23, we had issues with power, stuff like this. And I would a lot of times go to a cafe that I knew had a generator, and I would take, stuff I needed to work on and just go sit there and get stuff done. It was nicer. It wasn't as big of a deal in the winter, because winter, all our heat is gas-based, and so losing electricity isn't that big of a deal. I'm not a big fan of heat. That's why I try to leave Texas and go to Ukraine. And so I'm not super excited about, I don't have an AC unit in my apartment. I have a oscillating fan, and when I don't have power and I don't have that, there's only so much opening the windows can do. So you just, you deal with it. Some nights are hot to sleep in, So
Sean, are the seasons similar, or are they backwards like in other countries?
They're similar, usually about either 10 to 20 degrees cooler. Like most of their summer has been like maybe highs in the 80s, but most, like, they'll have, I was looking at the weather coming up in this next week, and they have some rain come through, and it drops down in the 70s for a few days, and things like that, and that's the high, that it drops down to 70s. So they definitely have cooler weather. It's not as hot, and the winters obviously are a little bit colder, where you have snow and things like that more often. But I like cold more. The Ukrainians hate the cold. They look at me and they're confused, because I'm like wearing short sleeves out in 50-degree weather, and they're like, "Why don't you have a jacket on?" I'm like, "It's 50 degrees weather. It's wonderful. Why would I wear a jacket in 50-degree weather?" But yeah, they bundle up their babies the second they're born to resist the cold, so they don't have the veins, I think, to handle it like we do in Texas.
All right, anybody else? Yes, sir.
There are times where the war does affect it. I mean, obviously, when the war began, we put everything on hold for that, from February 2022 to May. With normally classes and all those things, we stopped those. We tried to do other things, but like with power outages and things like that, that has affected us. Last year, the 2022-23 year of classes, we had to take precautions. We bought, backup emergency lights that we could charge and have battery operated, and things like that, to take care of things in case we lost power. It only affected us a few times. My home Bible study that I do was affected probably the most when we had power outages, and a lot of times we would study the Bible by candlelight, which was interesting. You adjust, you make do. I've got some in my apartment right now. Like, even though we hadn't had power outages for a long time, since like February of 23, I still have a strand of battery operated lights right in my entryway, because it's kind of one of the darker areas when you come into my apartment. That's there just so if I come in and power's out, I have an emergency source of light to see where I'm going and not trip when I walk in. So you kind of have those kind of precautions and things just in place. So.
Okay. Was there a question? Do you have a question? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody else?
I sometimes get asked, what do you miss most about being in Ukraine that you miss here? You can't get good peanut butter there. It's just not a big European thing. They don't make good quality. There's some that they'll slap American on it on the little container, but it doesn't taste the same. It's not Jif. It's not Peter Pan. But that and Tex-Mex, you can't get good Mexican food most places in Europe. And so I have been able to find at some shops, I'll find like actual like tortillas, like, not real tortillas, like Tex-Mex tortillas, like, just the white flour things you buy in, the stores here. I've been able to find things like that, but, like good salsa or things like that. If you want to make anything of high quality, you probably have to make it yourself. Ukrainians are not big on spice either. They don't like hot flavored things very much. They're And so it's hard to find, really good spicy peppers and things like that. So, downside.
All right, anybody else have a question? Well, we're going to be dismissed. Feel free to come by, and if you didn't want to ask him something out loud in front of everybody, you may have something you want to ask him in private. So could we stand together and be dismissed? And I'm going to ask Brother Curtis, would you just lead us in a word of prayer, please, and dismiss us, please?
Lord, we pray that you'll bless Sean as he is here at home, and Lord, as he goes back, that you will protect him and watch over him and his team there, Lord. Lord, we